Israel's military says its soldiers have discovered a tunnel shaft used by Hamas militants at al-Shifa hospital in northern Gaza. Israeli troops released an unverified video of the tunnel entrance after they took control of the hospital. Israel's attacks are controversial since hospitals have special protections under international humanitarian law, unless they are being used for a military purpose.
This, says Israel, is the smoking gun that proves Hamas has been using al-Shifa hospital for its operations. After a second day of raids on Gaza's biggest medical facility, the Israel Defense Forces said they uncovered a tunnel shaft and a vehicle containing a large number of weapons.
IDF forces found a tunnel shaft in Shifa Hospital, and teams of engineers are currently uncovering the infrastructure there. We also found a vehicle that had been prepared for the massacre on October 7th, but didn't leave. We found many weapons in it.
It comes after footage was released showing caches of weapons Israel says were hidden around the hospital. Hamas continues to deny the claims, describing them as, quote, repetition of a false narrative. Since the conflict broke out, Israel repeatedly claimed that Hamas was using Gazan hospitals for military purposes. And as the humanitarian situation in Gaza worsens, international condemnation has gotten louder, and Israel has been under increasing pressure to offer definitive proof of these claims. But in a situation as tense as this, and with daily reminders of the civilian suffering in Gaza, it's not clear that this new evidence will lighten that burden.
Well, in a few moments, we'll be hearing from Israel's ambassador to Germany. But first, DW correspondent Tania Krämer joins us from Jerusalem to give us the latest. Tania, the Israeli army is reportedly still at the al-Shifa hospital compound. What's the latest?
Well, the Israeli army released a statement on Thursday evening saying that they're conducting still targeted searches on the al-Shifa compound. It's the largest hospital, so they say it will, it takes time. They released those videos that you mentioned in the report, showing reportedly a tunnel shaft inside the compound and also a vehicle loaded with weapons. They also said they're operating into other hospitals, the Rantisi hospital and the Al-Quds hospital. But this is the latest update we have. This is from Thursday night. There's no new update as to what exactly is happening right now there in the hospital. We only know there is a communication blackout as well in Gaza right now, as the fuel ran out for the generators to power up the communication system. That was confirmed by the Palestinian telecom company Paltel. And we also know from the humanitarian organizations they're very, very concerned about the situation, of course, in the north, in those hospitals. While these army operations are going on in the hospitals, there are patients there in al-Shifa, the medical staff, and also many internally displaced people. They were looking for shelter there, thinking they are protected. And organizations like WHO, the World Health Organization, is saying that many of the hospitals are running out of service. They cannot provide services. Injured people cannot come to the hospitals. There's air bombardment going on and the ground operations. So there's no really safe space at the moment for residents, neither in the north but also in the south. There are also reports from airstrikes on the southern area where many people, residents from the north, were told to go as a safer space, but airstrikes are also reported from the south of the Gaza Strip.
Now, Israel says it has recovered the remains of 2 hostages held by Hamas. What more can you tell us?
Well, they announced this morning that they found the remains of a 19-year-old soldier. She was doing her service on October 7th, was taken hostage to Gaza. They found her in a structure, as they say, adjacent to Shifa Hospital, now transferred the remains to Israel, where the funeral will take place today. As well as on Thursday night, they found the remains of another hostage, a woman in her 60s from Kibbutz Be'eri. Her husband was killed on October 7th. She was taken to Gaza and apparently killed in Gaza. So this is a very worrying sign for many families and relatives. There actually is a big march underway through Israel. They say they're arriving, this march of relatives and supporters of the hostages, 239 still held in Gaza, in Jerusalem on Saturday night to demand answers from the government. Why are they not progressing with a potential hostage deal to free the hostages?
Now we're hearing reports that Israeli forces have carried out overnight raids in the occupied West Bank. Do you have any more information on that briefly, please?
Yeah, there have been many raids since October 7th. We've seen this already in the past year, but they have intensified, and one main focus is the northern West Bank town of Jenin in the occupied West Bank. There have been also a drone strike. At least 3 militants or 3 people have been killed there. We are seeing more and more activity of the Israeli army, and also, according to UN OCHA, at least 186 Palestinians have been killed since October 7 in the occupied West Bank, as well as 4 Israelis that have been killed.
DW correspondent Tania Krämer there reporting from Jerusalem. Thank you very much. Now I want to welcome Ron Prosor to the studio, Israel's ambassador to Germany. Thanks for making the time to join us here on DW News. There's a lot to discuss. And I'd like to begin with the current events in Gaza. First of all, do you anything more about the remains of the hostages that have been found?
No, but I just want everyone who basically looks at us to understand the amazing challenges that we have. So we have 2 goals here in this war. One, to really dismantle Hamas infrastructure and its leadership, and the other, to get the hostages back home. To navigate there is absolutely problematic because we can't really go after the tunnels. We can't go full steam ahead. We have to be very cautious. And as you see, until now, we are nearly 5 weeks after the 7th of October. We still can't identify all the bodies. Just think of what they really passed. So those are challenges that we're dealing with as we speak, moving. And of course, you saw not just hospitals, but mosques, schools. They're really using and abusing everything that, Western civilizations basically see as, something which is absolutely normal.
I'd like to come back to the current events in Gaza. Your Prime Minister has said that Israel is now unable to minimize civilian casualties and accusing Hamas of preventing civilians from moving to safer locations. Does that mean that Israel will now give up on protecting civilians?
Absolutely, exactly the opposite. As you see, we're working slowly and cautiously, and we are going from room to room, house to house, department after department. Just think, who would basically think that in an MRI scanner department, you'll find Kalashnikovs, hand grenades. I mean, this is not exactly a usual equipment for MRI scanners. So I would say that, yes, Hamas is abusing. We're giving safe havens. Hamas is shooting after its own people. We are basically giving, fuel, leaving it out before hospitals. Hamas doesn't allow. Humanitarian aid comes in. You saw the footage. Hamas doesn't allow its own population to take food and medicine and water out of those cars that bring them in.
You mentioned the safe havens there, but the IDF chief of the General Staff today said that they are nearly finished in the north of Gaza, will direct their operations to other areas of Gaza. I would assume that means the south, an area that you or Israel has said to be a safe haven. Are people in the south safe, and will they stay safe?
Yeah, safe haven is a safe haven. Yes, we are now moving over to the south part of Gaza because we basically completed the issue in the northern part of Gaza. But a safe haven, in contrast to Hamas, that basically breaches everything that it says and acts in a barbarian way. I mean, there's no way for me to, again, basically say what they did. we really make sure that the population is that goes out to those safe havens is going to be safe.
But still, there's a tax. There will be a tax on the south. There will be bombardment on the south. I mean, how can you still call that a safe haven?
Well, if they move out in places which we define as safe havens, they're going to be safe. Inside those places where Hamas command and control centers and everything else, I would suggest they move out of there. We ask, by the way, look at us. You know, this is a war zone, okay? We ask people to move out. We give them and say, hey, if you don't go out, this place is going to be attacked. We do everything according to the most that we can in order for, innocent people not to be hurt. But we have to understand, we have it with not just a terrorist organization, but, they are barbarians. There's no other way to describe it. And we have to deal with that in order to protect, at the end of the day, Israel. And Israel will never be the same as before the 7th of October. We'll never go back to having Hamas or anyone else on our borders that can basically have the opportunity to butcher Israelis and Jews.
We come to that in a second. I still want to stay on the subject of South Gaza. I mean, there's already at least 1 million people there in a very small area, and now to me it feels like they're being squeezed further and further and further into places, and the humanitarian situation on the ground already is dire.
Well, the only thing I can say about that we are doing the best that we can. I think we see more and more also on the international side and the Egyptian side with, field hospitals. We're allowing everything, but as you see, as we speak, rockets are still flying out towards Israel from the south. Those places where they have rockets and they have weapons and they have infrastructure, we will go after them. We will make sure, because no country can live with something like that. And the leadership and Hamas's infrastructure will be destroyed.
Would there have been another way after October 7th to deal with Hamas?
The answer to that is unfortunately no. We tried. You're now talking to someone who was the Director General of Israel's Foreign Service when we disengaged completely out of Gaza. We took out 22 settlements out. We left Gaza completely. We took out also 4 settlements in the West Bank to show that there's political horizon. There's not one Israeli or one settler in Gaza. And we gave people working permits because we thought that doing that would basically create some perspective. The same ones that went out to work in the kibbutzim drew maps where the families are, where the children, there's a dog, there's a door and a window. And the Hamas came with very, very good maps of where the kindergartens. So they themselves were part of this. We tried containment. We tried containment the same way that people in Europe had, Wandel durch Handel, and this didn't work. Containment doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because the ideology. We trivialize the ideology. When they said we want to basically destroy Israel, we want to throw Israel, we can't allow Jews to live there, we trivialized it. No, we will never do that again. And I hope also in Europe, in the West, people will not trivialize the ideology that now you see in many parts in Europe.
Israel's government has come under attack. It is not only from outside Israel, but also from within. Do you think the Israeli response would have been different, the retaliation would have been different had Israel had a more left-leaning government, say?
Here, thank you for the question. The answer is absolutely no. Israel, as you know, we are discussing, this is a vibrant democracy, and in the sense, there's no one in Israel, left or right. Hamas didn't really make a difference, for the Hamas, it wasn't a difference if you're a conservative Jew, a secular Jew, if you're left or right. Many that were butchered were basically dedicated their lives to making peace with Palestinians. The answer is absolutely not. And what I'm really proud of is that now, when Israel is really under attack, people come together. Israelis that went and climbed the, mountains in Nepal, or were out in in Goa in India, all come back to their units. When we're united, there's no one, we're unbeatable.
Let's talk about the international reaction and the support, or the waning support for Israel at the moment. There's an opinion poll this month here in Germany that the majority of Germans, for example, are critical of Israel's war in Gaza. The international opposition that you are facing, even from your friends, does that bother you?
No, because if after a massacre like that, in the 7th of October, people in the world cannot understand why Israel has a right to defend itself, then wow. And having said that, the German government, from the president to Chancellor Scholz to Vice Chancellor Habeck, to the foreign minister, defense minister, from day one, the only side someone decent can be is on the side of Israel. We see that support very clear in the German system. And yes, I think there's a gap between the government and part of the population. But I also see that there is an understanding here in Germany when you see what's happening here on the streets, demonstrations in Essen, saying they want a new caliphate. And here in Berlin, I think there's an understanding that if you don't deal with this ideology and these people today, you will unfortunately cry tomorrow.
Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is in Berlin today. He has called Israel a terror state and Hamas freedom fighters. Do you think Germany is still right to host him?
I'm not going to give advice to Germany to host or not. I think that the German government is going to do the right thing.
But it must be hard to stomach.
But this is Germany. The thing is, what do you say to him? And I think that, when you hear Erdogan talking, he's the last one to preach us, in the way he hosts the Hamas terrorists. And I think that Turkey, being an amazing and important strategic country in the region, Erdogan is on the wrong side of history. And unfortunately, one should also clearly tell him that.
Now let's come back to the future of Gaza. Netanyahu has said that Israel will control the overall security of Gaza after the war. Does that mean that that's been it for self-governance of the Palestinians in Gaza?
No, I think it would be fair to say that Netanyahu and no one in Israel think that we should politically basically control Gaza. But militarily, we should be able to go back, and every time someone puts in a rocket or something else, we will be able to really control that. How do you do that? That's hard. But we won't allow this military machinery, this terror state, to be again with weapons, rockets, and this has to be structured differently.
But then how are you going to do this without a constant military presence in Gaza?
As you saw, we don't have a constant military presence in the West Bank, and we're still able to do that. I think everyone who really wants peace in this region, let's try and think about it. Okay, this wasn't coincidental. We were coming near to peace with Saudi Arabia. There's no coincidence that basically Hamas operated. Who do we see working? We see the Houthis from Yemen, proxies of Iran. We see Hezbollah up in the north, basically conducting nearly war against us. We see Hamas. Those who really want peace should understand that only taking out Hamas and creating a regional cooperation in the region, maybe with Arab countries, like the Saudis, like the Emirates, like Jordan and Egypt, we will be able to build a structure that in essence will allow us to move to the next stage. And just think logically, we left Gaza. What interest do we have in Gaza? We left Gaza never to look back into Gaza. And if it's going to be quiet in Israel, it's going to be quiet in Gaza. It's a very simple equation that people should think about. And at the end of the day, all people who really want peace have to understand that Hamas cannot stay with its terror infrastructure.
Now, let's go back to and distinguish between Israel and the Jews, especially here in Germany. There's been a wave of anti-Semitism on social media, on the streets, everywhere, and also here in Germany. Do you see a link between that current military operation in Gaza and this rise in anti-Semitism?
Logically, you would say that there's a link. But if you look back before the 7th of October, you saw, the way synagogues, just think simple stuff, synagogue, Jewish schools, they're all protected. You don't see, churches or mosques being protected. There's a lot of anti-Semitic actions taking place. It has no connection with the 7th of October. What is amazing for me, that after the 7th of October, it even, rose up. But the fact that Jews here in Germany, and not just in Germany, in Europe, don't feel safe going to the S-Bahn or talking in Hebrew or putting a kippah, we really have to work together so that does not happen. And I think, yes, you see more anti-Semitic incidents taking place, but if you look back, there were many before the 7th of October, so I don't see a direct link here.
From Prosor there. The Israeli ambassador to Germany, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today. There's a lot more to discuss, but we have to leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.